Today I am going to be talking about autism and special interests. It's a topic that comes up pretty often around here. As a quick explanation, special interests are things that some people who are autistic tend to be very interested in and tend to enjoy learning about or experiencing, or just tend to be really passionate about. Today I am going to be speaking from my own experience, both as an autistic adult who is married to another autistic adult, and also as a parent who has at least 4 autistic children. There's one thing that in my own experience I think probably skews this more than anything else, and that is that I also have ADHD. While this may vary a lot from person to person, one thing that I've noticed is that people who are autistic that also are hyperactive or who also have ADHD, those of us who tend to become very interested in certain things, I guess I do tend to think of them as super interests, sometimes have a tendency to jump around from interest to interest. So for me, there's writing, and I've been probably super interested in writing since I was in 3rd grade. So basically for over 3 decades. And horses was another one that lasted for a really, really long time. And sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. So for a decade, horses hasn't been a super interest of mine. I guess probably mostly because of time, ability, life. And it also helps that because probably, I'm guessing, ADHD is very much a part of my personality and who I am. It's really easy for me to find other things that catch my interest. For me, part of it has always been based around creating things. So usually my other interests are all creative type things. I can quilt, I can sew, I can knit, I can crochet. I enjoy things like painting and drawing, but I've never been good at them, and so that's always sort of been frustrating to me. But I am good at looking at things in terms of sewing and creating, knitting type things and making. I have, as the various neuropsych tests showed, I'm not very good at following directions. My working memory was extremely poor, but I could look at a princess dress and just see it, and then I can make it, which was really useful when Maggie and Sadie were little. I made them a lot of really beautiful princess dresses. I would just make them and they would fit, or there would be times when I have looked at a sweater and just knitted the sweater. It's hard for me to follow step-by-step written directions, but I'm pretty good at looking at things and then making them. So at different times, like when I learned how to knit during college originally, my roommate taught me how just the regular knit stitch, and I probably made 100 scarves right away. and then 8 years later, when I was pregnant with Sadie, I got into learning how to actually knit other things besides scarves that were just knitting back and forth. And I read some books, and then I sat down and knitted all day one day and knitted my first baby sweater. Knitting for me became another super interest for a few years, where I was super focused on it. I knitted tons of baby clothes, baby booties, all sorts of things. And then I wanted to learn how to crochet, so I learned how to crochet, and I was crocheting all the time. Or sewing, the same thing with sewing. I decided I was going to sew, so I started sewing. My interests tend to jump around, and so I'll have a lot of stuff for different interests, where a ton of fabric, a ton of yarn, I went into needle felting for a while, and I have 2 giant containers full of wool from my needle felting phase. Yeah, just different phases of interests where I get really, really into things. At the moment, it would probably be writing. I would count video making as a more long-term one, since I've been doing this every day for over 2 years. And then probably the more temporary one right now is making jewelry. I'm counting this one as more temporary because when Paul asked if it was an interest, I said that the messiness of the resin might make it a more temporary one. I like the outcome, but I really don't like the messiness of the craft compared to knitting, which has made knitting a more long-term one. I like the process of knitting. It's almost more of a stim to me. I can sit and knitting relaxes me, whereas this, well, I like how these feel when I wear them, but I really don't like the process of actually making them very much. Although I do like the process of actually sanding them down and making them nice afterwards. So I don't know, we'll have to see how long. If I can get better at doing it so it's not as messy, we might be okay. That's how interests work for me. They tend to jump around. I mean, not super fast. I might be intensely interested in something for 6 months or a year before my interest turn to something else, but eventually they usually do. No, eBay, I don't want to buy a clarinet. And generally other people's interests interest me quite a bit too. So Sadie's interests at the moment would seem to be the flute, running. She's been dragging me out with her, forcing me to run every single night of the week because she's going to do track this year, which is really fast. She's making me do a couch to 10K, which I realize is very good for me, but I've been so sore for the last week. So running, oh, how could I forget dinosaurs? She wants to be a paleontologist. She knows just about the name of any dinosaur you can show her at the moment, and she can't wait for the libraries to reopen so that she can get more books out. I just ordered her a book because she doesn't really have any specific dinosaur books, and she cannot wait for it to get here. So those are her interests. But like me, Sadie also has ADHD. If you're new here, she's 11, so her interests do change. So at one point last year she wanted to be an astronaut, she wanted to be a farmer, a dairy farmer, so it changes pretty frequently. She was really into art about 2 months ago, so it's interesting. Her interests probably change a little bit more quickly than mine do, but she's younger too. For Maggie, her interest has been mermaids for a long time. We've suspected that Maggie is hyperactive. Her therapist always said she was hyperactive, but if she is, it's definitely not to the same level as the rest of us, I guess, maybe. But Maggie's interest has been steady for years. Her first major interest was Dora, and she loved Dora until she was maybe 3 or 4. And then when she was 3 or 4, so that would be 5 or 6 years ago, her interest shifted to mermaids, and since then everything has been mermaids for the last 5 or 6 years. So she loves mermaids. Patrick is next. Patrick is really into Pokemon. I would say that is his main interest, and then he has a cat named Snowball, and cats are his other interest, but mostly Pokemon. He could tell you anything about Pokemon. We go out and we play Pokemon Go and do gym battles and stuff like that, and I started playing Pokemon Go because there was gyms and stuff near his school, and so I would play it in battle in gyms when he was in school, when he was little. So I've been playing it for longer than he's been interested in it, and he can now come up and he'll be like, "Oh mom, that's a rock Pokemon, quick, get a grass Pokemon, you'll win." He'll tell me what to use, and I don't know these things. And he constantly surprises me with just how much his mind can retain about his interest. I guess if James has a special interest, it would probably be Sonic and Pokemon. Maybe Sonic a little bit more than Pokemon. And Tessie is unicorns, horses, My Little Ponies. Her face lights up if she sees anything with a horse. That's pretty much all she plays with are horses and My Little Ponies, and arranging them and playing with them at home. Hey, sorry to bug you. Quick question. Would you say you have special interests? Okay, so I had to ask Paul because I couldn't think of what his interests would actually be. He said when he was little it would have been like baseball cards and coins, and he said now, and I should have totally realized what his were, it would be politics and punditry and which we can't even talk about, and probably theology. That would probably sum up his. Actually, I was gonna say sports because he is really into all things like Boston sports teams too, which is another thing I cannot tease him about at all, which I learned very soon after meeting him. And so that is my personal experience on special interests, on intense interests and autism. Anyways, that is sort of a glimpse into special interests around here. That is it for today. If you like this video, we'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up, and if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.